What up, Marsh Pod? We've got a losing streak for the originators. We've got rules that tell us we need to follow, but are we sure? Are we sure this one is a rule following or a rule breaking? Um, Three tough losses, but yeah, we'll see. Coming up. Okay, so the originators, they've lost three in a row. The sky is seemingly falling. They couldn't get it done against Europe, and that's it. Their season's over, right? It's all said and done. It's been fun, but now the originators at 12-5 are officially done. Of course, that's not true. Of course, we have rules to follow, right? I've said it multiple times. Handful of rules. One of them is we shouldn't care about every single loss. But now the originators have a 3-game losing streak, which is tied for the longest among division leaders or division potential leaders. With Showtime and Rocky Mountain, they're the only teams that are either in first place or within the top 3 within reason to have lost more than 2 games in a row. So Showtime and Rocky each has 3 in a row, and Rocky Mountain now, they're just doing their we win 5, we lose 3, we win 5. They've lost their last 2. Showtime, they had their 3 losses earlier in the season, kind of when things seemed to be stumbling. They've righted the ship, but Originators now 3 losses in a row. Those losses, a 1-point defeat to Bad Boys, of course, a 7-point loss to the North, and then a loss to Europe by 5 that, you look at 5, you say they were in it. Watching it, it didn't totally feel like it. They had some runs, but it just always kind of felt like Europe was playing better. And so the question is, what do we make of this? As I said earlier, and as I've said many times, we shouldn't be taking every single loss and assuming the sky is falling. The loss to Bad Boys is an understandable one. Bad Boys is a team that's kind of on the fringe of the top 15, top 10. They're 8-8. They've lost their last 2 after that win. The loss to the North is probably the most concerning one. The North is 4-13, a staggeringly second worst record in basketball in SimWorld Hoops, second only to Middle East, who's 3-12. And then, of course, the loss to Europe. Europe also in that 500 range. They're 8-7 after winning 2 straight games to get above 500. So what do we make? What's the point of this? And the point is, I think this is a delineation moment for us potentially to identify who are the top teams and who are the top 0.5 teams, right? There are teams that are well above. So you look at Beasts of the East, Best Coast Ballers, Bay Area, and H-Town. None of them have lost consecutive games. Bay Area is 11-5. That's the worst record of those 4 teams. You've got Beasts at 12-5, Best Coast at 12-4. H-Town is 11-3. So if you're just going off a win percentage there, 78.6. That's tops or second in the league behind only Lone Star. But all those teams have only lost 1 game. Meanwhile, Lone Star, they've lost 2 in a row once, but they're 14-3. Best record in SimWorld Hoops. So looking at this Originators team, who's now 12-5, I don't even think that his 3-game losing streak is worth blowing out of proportion to the point of saying they aren't as good as Bay Area. Bay Area is 11-5. Just because Bay Area has only lost 1 game, do we think that the Originators aren't better than them? So what is this delineation point? It's the delineation point of saying, where are they? If there is a top tier and there's a second tier, right? Our pointless power rankings are coming back next week. That's always been the top 10. I think that's actually been a really good indicator for us of who the top 10 teams are. Look beyond the record. There's 9 teams that are in that we are well above 500 mark, and Run DMV just became the 10th. They're 9-6. They're the 10th from we're not 2 games above or 2 games below, which is basically what we've talked about as the middle class being. Run DMV is no longer there. They've won 3 in a row. They're 9-6. But let's take a look at that top. Let's go 9. Let's not consider Run DMV. There's a top of that. There's a bottom of that. The bottom of that is teams like Southeast Select, who've kind of had some struggles, but they've been good. Showtime, kind of near the bottom of that. They're 10-6. They've had that 3-game losing streak, but they haven't really fallen off the cliff to the point of concern. Rocky Mountain is near that. This 3-game losing streak for the Originators is just saying maybe they're a little lower than that. That being said, I'm not going to get bent out of shape on a 3-game losing streak. Why? Because one was a 1-point loss to a good basketball team. One was a 7-point loss to a team that they probably should have beat, but at least they were in it. And then that 5-point loss, while they never really felt like they should have been running away with that win, it also never really felt like they were getting their tails kicked in. It was a rough night, a quiet night from DJ Wagner, which we've seen occasionally. Wagner in that game had 15 points, 7 of 16 shooting. Not his best effort, not his worst effort. From a field goal percentage standpoint, it was his third worst, with a 41% against Indy and a 41% against Cascadia. So trending in the wrong direction in terms of just not an awesome night. But at the same time, it was a really rough night from Kadarius Loftus, 3 of 14. And Loftus has had a 4-game stretch now, 3-game stretch where he has not shot better than 31%, 7 of 22 against the North, and 4 of 14 against Bad Boys. So what this loss is it's saying, hey, it turns out DJ Wagner needs a little bit of help, and perhaps the help that he has is not as consistent as we had hoped. Because Kadarius Lofton has had awesome nights, right? The 43 against Latin America, the 28 against Indy, the 25 against Beasts of the East. He's got a propensity for big nights. But the challenge is that he can't be relied upon every single night like you should be able to do with DJ Wagner. I don't want to hear that Wagner's not the number one player. I understand that Bronny James is there, but Wagner isn't no longer in the competition or the conversation for that because of one bad night. He's been incredibly consistent from start to the end of the season so far. But what we've determined now is that, as we've already learned, no team is unbeatable. And I think this 3-game stretch, and we won't see them again, or we will see them on the 29th. So by next week, and that's a matchup with Showtime. That's not going to be easy. But we're gonna get a good idea. If they lose a 4th straight, I think you start raising the alarm bell, gets turned up in the volume a little bit. 3 is questioning, especially with that loss to the North. You say, what is this team? Well, it's not unbeatable, which we knew. It's dangerous when you consider now, because the race to 1, which obviously we just announced is going to be in Houston, is a 1-game elimination, much like college basketball is. So it's not like you have the margin of error that even a 3-game series provides you. It's one and done. That was never going to change. That wasn't the fact that is always, and it's going to lead to some crazy results come August. There are going to be results that we don't see coming in the race to 1, and there's going to be an upset or two. I almost guarantee it right now. We're not going to get shocked based off what we've seen this season and based off the capability of that, like I said, middle class. But the Originators is now the ground has shifted. The ground isn't as secure as it once was when they were without the head-scratching losses that we talked about, I think, a month ago. We knew that was going to come. Those head-scratching, the how did that happen, those have occurred. The question now, and what will ultimately determine how good of a team this is, which I've already said, I think they have the best coach in SimWorld Hoops. I think they have the best player in SimWorld Hoops. How do they right the ship? Because a team like Rocky, who goes 5-3, 5-2, you kind of say, well, what version are we going to get come the playoffs? And meanwhile, a team like Lone Star, who has lost 2 in a row, but only 3 games on the season, they have come in prepared. They've come in and they've responded. That group, with a good head coach finally in place, has really answered the bell. And their 2 stars, Nini Gibson and Jason Miguez, have been there every single step of the way. Are we going to get that from the Originators? I think it's a valid question. We know what we're going to get from DJ Wagner, but what are we going to get from Kadarius Loftus? What are we going to get from Jared Quinney, who went 1 of 4, 5 points against Europe? What's Victoras Ilgauskas going to do? He had 4 blocks, 9 points, 7 rebounds. He looked really good. Is that what we're going to get? Does he need to do more? Kamari Ward had his best game, 16 points. Is he going to rise to that level? There's a lot of questions. This loss and this losing streak has just kind of brought those to the limelight. They have a lot of pieces. It's why this team is really good. But they need all of those pieces to be working in sync to make it a championship team. For the last 3 games, they haven't been. I'm going to hedge my bet on the fact that this is a blip, this is turning around, because the rule has always been the good teams are going to lose, and that's fine. It's how do they respond. And the Originators now have an incredible opportunity to respond to this losing streak and say, this is who we are. Backs against the wall, game against Showtime. No better opportunity for the Originators to prove exactly who they are. Have a great weekend. Have a great Memorial Day, by the way. We've got a nice schedule coming up here for you hoop fanatics. Thursday night, Beasts of the East, Gulf Coast. That's a good one. Actually on the call with my man B-Ron tonight for that, so please tune in. But a good triple header. H-Town Hoopers. They stay over in the Pacific region. They've got an Asia-Pacific matchup in Japan tonight. How do they respond with the news about the coach? I think that's a big one to watch. And then a Memorial Day triple header. OGs and Showtime. Doesn't get better than that, except it does when H-Town Hoopers run DMV. Can the DMV get 4 in a row? I mean, talked about it right off the jump at the beginning of the season that Myron Murray, I'm not going to lose faith in him as this team kind of stumbled along, like mediocre. They showed some signs of life with beating down on Gotham. Then they would get beat by bad teams. 3 in a row, they could get to 9-6. They could be the 10th team to get to 10 wins. The division, the Atlantic Division, is not safe if Run DMV is playing the way they have. That's going to be a great game. And then, of course, Bay Area, Cascadia. Cascadia has been up and down 2 in a row, though. 8-9 overall. Bay Area 11-5. So, good Memorial Day triple header on deck. Have a great Memorial Day. Tune in. Talk to you on Tuesday.